If you could sit down with one of the sharpest minds in real estate and ask those questions that you're always asking, like, what's going on in real estate today and where's the market headed? Then you're in the right spot today, because today I have with us Jimmy Burgess, and he's going to share his insights on what is going on with the market from the realtor for realtors, for buyers, for sellers. He has a mastermind group that I try to tune into as often as I can. Let me tell you a little bit more about Jimmy. I'm so happy to have him here. So Jimmy is the chief coaching officer for Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices and for HomeServices of America. And he has sold over $500 million in property. He's been in real estate for 25, probably 25 plus years. He is a writer. He is a contributing writer for Inman News for, I think, 3 years now. And he's won all kinds of awards. He has been a finalist for the Inman Innovator of the Year. He is a pioneer in AI technology, or I should say knowledge. He's a finalist in Inman's Innovator of the Year for pioneering work with AI, okay, in our industry. And what really impresses me so much about Jimmy is when I listen to his mastermind, I know he's giving from his heart. He brings in people from all over the country so you can get information about what's going on in the market all over the country. And he doesn't just try to inspire realtors to do better financially, but he tries to inspire them, and he does, to do better with customer service. And if you follow me at all, you know that I'm all about the customer experience. So that is just my heart, as well as giving customers an experience. So I am so happy to have the famous Jimmy Burgess with me here today at Success Through Connections.
Zelda, thank you for the kind introduction. I think that my children would completely disagree with you on the famous. They would laugh at that. So I appreciate you having me here. Can't wait to hopefully give some value to everybody that's listening. And hopefully they're going to leave with not just some ideas, but maybe some inspiration that'll help them serve at their highest level with the clients that they've been entrusted with as well. So thanks for having me.
Well, I'm honored, and you're famous in my group. So that's all that matters. So, Jimmy, you've been in real estate, you say, for 25 years. Where were you before
31.
That? Oh, God.
31 years. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is one of those. So I've always said I'm an SOB, son of brokers. Both of my parents, after they got divorced, my dad moved about 50 miles away, started a real estate company. My mom remarried, and she and my stepfather started a real estate company. So literally it was everything I knew growing up. And I was like, I'm never going into real estate, And so here we are now. This is my 31st year in real estate. And so it is well over half my life. And it's been one of these situations where now after 31, I don't know when I became the old guy that's been doing this so long, but all of a sudden now it's like I've seen different market cycles. I've seen trends. I've seen fads come as far as the way to service clients, the way to generate leads, the way to do the business. And what I've found is that there are certain things that have just stood the test of time, and it may look a little bit different, but it has the same core foundation. And so what's been fun for me is now, after I've made all the mistakes, it's not like I got all the answers. I've made most of the mistakes. And with the reach that I have with agents across the country, I get to really hopefully try to give back to the business that's given me and my family so much. And so that's kind of a little bit of a background. And really what kind of drives me is that I had so many people through my 31-year career that really, just really taught me how to do this the right way, who inspired me. And so I think the best way where I'm from, the best way to honor those people that took the time to help me grow and become hopefully the agent and the servant that I am, that I get to honor them by spreading a message that doing what they did for me, and hopefully even maybe taking it to a whole other level on trying to do it as much as I can with as many people as I can.
I love that. And I love how your mastermind, they share. They're so giving. It's incredible. Yeah. I hate to confess this, but I'm going to right here for the world to hear. So when I first got into this business 17 years ago, I waited for my son to get his license and do what he needed to do to get, since he's the younger generation, you be the broker. I don't want to be the broker. So he became the broker. And it's been a very interesting to watch, to follow in their footsteps. I never thought my son would do what I'm doing. It was just incredible to see. And I would never share. So he was like, why are you keeping everything a secret, Mom? Why don't you just share your information? I've been a business owner all my life. We won't say how long that is, but I've been in business for 40 years, but 17 of them in real estate. And so he was like, you should share it. It's not like you can't share. But it wasn't until probably in the last 5 years that I said, you know what? He's right. It's not like Joe Doe's client is my client. So sharing is giving, and you got to give it back, because otherwise you can't take it with you.
Yeah, no. And I will tell you that this is the biggest thing too, is like when you get to that point, and this was the change I had. Obviously, I grew up in real estate where everybody was trying to they didn't want to share any ideas because they were afraid somebody would do what they're doing. Well, first off, most people won't do what you do. Secondly, if you're doing it at a high level, the second thing is those that do, odds are they're going to actually refine it a little bit, and you may be able to learn something fresh and a new way to do what you've been doing and even do it better. And then lastly, what I found is that the more that I share, the more I get. And so literally by sharing ideas, it's amazing how people turn around and give me more ideas. And so I think it's something that we have always kind of, in this industry specifically, we've kind of almost tried to be worried and living in fear as agents. And as this market is changing so quickly, literally sharing an idea today, it's probably going to be something different 3 months from now that's working. And so having that capability to share, I think, is just core. It's a foundation for me. It's a way to show some gratitude for what the business is doing for you. And by doing so, I'm going to tell you right now, you can't outgive this business. If you give ideas, you will get business, and you will give ideas that are coming back to you and really at a much higher pace than what you give.
It's true. It's like recently you had a mastermind about open houses, and sellers want you to have an open house. And I don't do open houses. Well, I said, okay, this seller wants me to have an open house, and your open house mastermind came in just in time. It's like they've tweaked some things that I knew to do, but it was tweaked a bit. And I went, I'm going to try some of those things. And I did. So speaking of the shifting and what's going on in the world today, because like the open houses have changed a bit and this has changed a bit. From your perspective, what's maybe been the single biggest shift happening in real estate right now, both for a buyer and for a seller?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we're in a transition market, obviously, and it depends on where you are in the country. It's kind of interesting. I'm here in Florida where I am, our inventory has been rising for 3 plus years. And so we have been seeing, an increase, which obviously shifts from a completely, almost crazy seller's market to now being level to being almost a buyer's market in some certain pockets. Mm-hmm. But then you go up to the Northeast. I spoke at the Massachusetts Association of Realtors conference just about a month ago, and they had asked me to speak on how to generate listings in a low inventory environment. I literally had to go back and find my playbook from 3 years previous in Florida and just blow the dust off of it because it was different. So I think obviously every single market is different. So understanding your local market, but if you're a buyer or a seller, data is so important. And we have agents that are out there that are sharing the market data that gives you the capability. Also, you can utilize AI to find out what's going on. But a couple of things if you're a buyer or seller to understand about your local market is understand, are you in a situation where a couple of key things that I like to watch that I think could help both buyers and sellers understand what they're facing or what the opportunity is for them is I like to watch average days on market. And what an average days on market is for the average person that's out there to understand is that is the number of days a typical home that goes under contract. How long does it take from the time it comes on the market until it actually goes under contract? We were operating during COVID in hours. I mean, it was just flying off the shelf. If you're in a market where the average days on market are continuing to rise, that means that there is going to be more opportunity on the buyer side. Sellers are going to have to understand that it's going to take a little bit longer. And typically when it takes longer, there is a direct proportion to the list to sale price. So in other words, the listing amount, say a house is listed at $500,000, what does it sell for? So if it's sold, for instance, $450,000, just to make the numbers easy for me, it's selling for 10% below. So the list to sale price ratio is 90%. When you watch those two things on days on market and also on the list to sale price, it's an indicator to tell you whether sellers are in control and it's a seller's market and they can demand more, or if buyers are in control and they can have the ability to negotiate more. Understanding where you are in that market gives you a better understanding and sets realistic ideas on what you can do in the negotiations to be successful. A couple of things when you're thinking about this from a buyer or seller's perspective is the more information you have, the more you're going to be able to understand exactly the situation you're in and what you can do as far as taking the opportunities you have. I always say this, if you're in an extreme seller's market, which we were during COVID, there's two factors that you always think about when you're negotiating. Number one is negotiating price. And then the second thing is negotiating terms. Now, when you're in an extreme seller's market, typically, like we were during COVID, a buyer really didn't have the option to negotiate price or terms. Now, as you shift back, if we were in a situation where we have over a year's worth of, of days on market on average in there, and we're shifting where it's an extremely big buyer's market, the seller has less opportunity to negotiate on price or terms. And where we are now is we're getting back to a more normalized market in most markets across the country, where the average days on market is pretty much in line with what we see historically. It's still maybe leaning a little bit less in some areas. But what we're seeing is now is that gives a buyer and a seller an understanding that in a normal market, odds are you can negotiate one, but you can't negotiate both. So you have to put a priority on what it is that you're looking for. Is it price or is it terms? And then understanding your local market on where you are, whether you're a buyer or seller, and what advantages or opportunities you have, that gives you a better understanding on how much you can negotiate on those things. So I hope that gives a little bit of a better broader perspective on how to do it.
That's wonderful. I have a seller now who he's like, should I sell now or should I sell later? And he goes, I think I'm going to sell now because at least I know what the market is now. If I wait till the spring or the summer, I don't know what's going to happen then. It could go up, it could go down. He goes, but at least now I know what I can sell for and I know what I can get for, what I can buy for. So that was, you just don't know.
And that's the thing. No one can ever time the market perfectly. So the best time to buy a home is when you are in a position to buy a home. I will tell you that if your time frame for buying is that you're going to be in the home for 5 to 7 years, you're going to be very pleased with that decision, historically speaking, over a 5 to 7 year period. If you're wanting to sell, just like what your seller's selling, it is no one knows what the market. If somebody tells you what the market's going to do going forward in the next short term, 3 to 6 months, they'll lie to you about other stuff because nobody knows. I mean, obviously, none of us have crystal balls. And understanding that the time to sell is when it makes the most sense to you and your family, and you take all of those time frames out where the question marks out and you're comfortable with selling right now and you'll be satisfied with this price and the market environment that you're in, that's the time to sell. And so a lot of it is specific to individuals. You can't time the market. And when it comes to buying, I've always said it this way. It's not about timing the market and buying at the perfect time. It's more about time in market. So in other words, if you're holding a house for an extended period of time, historically speaking, you're going to be very pleased with the amount of equity that you're going to build based on the time that you're in market versus timing the market and being that perfect time to buy.
That's true. And the perfect time for me to buy or sell, I tell people, it's like, what's your motivation? Do you need to move? Like, are you moving?
Right.
You have to move. Now's the perfect time. Let's do it. So, yeah.
Yes.
So what are you noticing? Because I know you talk to people from all over the country. Are any particular states surprising you? Like the markets are booming and you wouldn't think they would, or they're really sluggish and you would have thought they would be more booming. Are you noticing any of that?
Yeah, I think what we saw is the areas where we saw during COVID, where we saw, I always call it like there's a certain number of transactions on average every year. So when you go through something like we did in COVID, where we had what I call front loading. In other words, we took and we had so many transactions. I'm going to use it in Florida, in Texas, and we had those areas where people were flooding into those areas purchasing. You took what would normally be the average number of sales and you took some from the coming years and you pulled them forward. So it's like you front loaded some of the transactions. So you saw extreme numbers of transactions on the front end. And then which is that there has to be a normalization. You can only do that for so long. And so what we've seen is that a lot of those markets that were so red hot, the Miamis, the Tampas, the Austin markets, you're seeing some of those markets cool down a little faster than some of the others. Then there's pockets, like I say, in the Northeast, where you're seeing that it is still just ultimately, it is about there's not enough inventory for the buyers that are out there. So I think it's all personalized. But the areas that are surprising me right now is, and we'll wait to see, how, there's always socioeconomic, there's always political. There are always things that lead to transitions and movements, based on taxes, based on, the different things that are out there. So I think going forward, obviously something we're going to watch is what is the political arena? What does it do to see if there is any kind of movement in, from states to states or what's going on there? But right now, you're still seeing a normalization in most markets of heading back towards more norms of what we've seen historically than what we saw on the extremes.
Yeah, I noticed like now you'll see buyers asking for contingencies that, for concessions, I should say, concessions,
Right.
all that. I saw the last one got a little greedy and they wanted, it was like you said, one or the other, but they were asking for everything and they were not negotiable and neither was the seller. It was like, okay, this
Right.
is a stalemate. Let's just move on. It was like,
Yeah.
this is not happening, y'all. Move on.
Right.
So
Yeah. And look, I think this is where, as if you're a buyer or seller, but if you're an agent, where you want to find is where are the needs? Because a lot of times when you have this separation where sellers' expectations are one thing, and basically sellers want the appreciation they were seeing in the market 2 to 3 years ago. Buyers want what they anticipate it's going to be going forward. And what it does is it opens up a couple of options as far as what we're seeing out there with these folks. So for instance, let's just use this for example. If we're looking at buyers that are looking to come into a marketplace, and to get realistic is to understand what's happening. Understand, yes, you do in most cases have more opportunity to negotiate. But what are the negotiation things that are most important to you? That could be timing. That could be, a contingency on a sale. It could be a contingency. It could be straight price driven. Whatever it is, identify what that is. Work with your agent to be able to identify that, make it a priority, and then find the seller who needs to sell. Not the one that wants to sell or is like, this is not the market for sellers that are like, let's just see what happens.
Right.
This is a market where it's someone who needs to sell because it's important for them to move to the next step, whether that be relocation because of job, whether it be wanting to be closer to family, whatever the case may be. Finding those opportunities where the motivation is there for the seller to be in the market, not just on the market, is going to be the opportunity that the buyers are going to see. And if you're a seller, look, if you're out there and you're just like, I'll just see what happens here, it may be time to just pull off this market and figure out and let the market get better direction, because you're actually not, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. You can be on the market, but not in the market price wise. And there's a lot of inventory that's on the market right now that is not in the market. And it's just really clogging everything up.
I agree. I have seen a few of those sellers that they're just, well, let's just wait and see what happens. It's like, no, you need a price adjustment. Your price is too high.
Right.
But
right.
I'm not ready yet. Okay, well.
Yeah. I know.
Let me show you a house down the street that sold for what you want, but your house doesn't compare to that one, really. So
correct. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's one of those. Look, I think if you're a seller out there and if you're an agent specifically, show is better than tell. And so literally what we've done is, like you say, we'll show the comparables, but we'll do a lot of times is we'll say, hey, look, let's just go take a ride. Let me go show you houses like a buyer that will see price points that are like yours. Let me show you what's out there that you're competing with. And I think sometimes that can be an eye opener, and understanding that in reality, if you're continuing to have a place that is priced above the market, more marketing is not going to help. All it's going to do is let more people know that the house is overpriced, because the consumers understand value and price right now better than ever, because they've got so much access. Mm-hmm. So it's a time to be realistic on your price. Obviously, look, there are certain things we know that we can influence the sales price as agents, as marketers, but it has to be within reason and within, the realm of possibility as well.
I totally agree with that one. So let's switch for a minute about different trends and consumers.
Yeah.
Are you noticing, what are you noticing about generational differences? Like, how are the millennials and the Gen Zs and the baby boomers, how are they approaching home ownership differently?
Yeah, it was interesting. NAR did a study on the percentage of people when they were, potential buyers that were considering using an agent or trying to do this, where they would go to for sale by owner and doing it on their own. And the highest percentage was the 25 to 34-year-old. So it's the younger generation, actually, that is more relying on professionals, which was kind of counter to what I had anticipated. And so what we're seeing is that
going for the agents. They're the ones.
Yes.
The agent. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And I will tell you, I think a lot of that is driven by social media. I think a lot of the things that we're seeing with agents utilizing social media to tell the stories of sales, to show what they do and the value that they bring. I think those are the agents that are really seeing some opportunities in that younger age group and that demographic and their exposure. I mean, it's almost like, we say it down here at the beach, you got to be in the water to catch the wave. Well, the folks that are on social media, that millennial buyer, they spend a lot of time on social media. And so consequently, a lot of times if they start their search, the algorithm is putting people in front of them that are true professionals that do things in a different way than maybe we've done it in the past, that is fun, that is exciting, and that shows value. And so it's interesting to see that, but we're seeing obviously that the influence of social media, the influence of video marketing, and that the younger buyer demographic, according to NAR's study, shows that they are the highest percentage of people that are looking for professional assistance from agents.
Wow. So what about, so are the rest just not, are trying to do it on their own?
No, look, they're not. No, I mean, look, they're still high. We're still talking about, I think the lowest age group was still in the 87% range of people that are wanting to use agents. So one thing that with all the change in NAR, as far as, the NAR settlement, as far as everything that we've had change, one thing that has stayed consistent, we are actually at a higher level, is that the consistency of clipping off right between 85 and 90% of people absolutely see the value in utilizing a real estate agent to assist them in the transaction. So that is a trend that, we really haven't seen a lot of change on, but it's pretty confirming. Every single time we've seen this, my buddy Chris Kelly had shared a slide on this where you can go back and look. It seems like about every 8 to 10 years, we have something that everybody says is going to absolutely change everything in our business, and that the agent is going to be moved out. If you go back when we saw initially when we moved years and years ago, decades ago, from the MLS book where people actually had to come into the office to look at this. And they're like, oh no, everything's going to be online. And they're going to have the ability through the MLS just to find the information themselves. You actually didn't see a decrease in the number of people that were utilizing agents, like the scare that everybody said. Then we had Zillow come along, and now they're sharing all the data at an even higher level. And everybody's like, oh, that's going to end agents. And we haven't seen that, And then we saw the NAR settlement, and everybody was worried, oh, that's going to cut down and reduce commissions. It actually made them move up. So, these are things that we're seeing trends where everybody, I just think that a lot of times in the news, what sells in the news is the flash, the world is ending, the chicken little, the sky is falling. And in reality, what we're seeing is that, especially with this next generation, we're continuing to see them see the value in utilizing a professional real estate agent to help them and shepherd them through the biggest transaction in a lot of cases that they may have in their entire lifetime. So those are some trends we're seeing right now that just confirm the value that the consumer sees in what we do on a daily basis.
I'm going to go a little deeper on that in just a minute, because I've got a lot of questions about that with all this AI and everything else. I'm going to go back to that. But I want to stick for us just a second on the different generations. We've talked about the buyers and the sellers a little bit. Let's talk for a second, Jimmy, about the realtors, the change in the guard, if you will, the difference between and we all saw that during COVID, a gazillion millennials jumped in and they were just order takers, in my opinion. Sorry, I don't mean to offend you, but if you've stuck with it, then you're not just an order taker, because it's harder now. Right. But they operate different. They dress different. They act different. They are on social media different. What are some of the things that you see that differentiates how the boomers, the Gen Zs, and those millennial realtors are?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes it's not even the age, it's the amount of time that people have been in the business. There are some agents that, I had somebody tell me this one time. They said, hey, everybody's going to get older, but getting old is a decision. And me personally, I'm not going to go down like that. And so that's why I'm so focused on AI. That's why I'm so focused on marketing, is because there are agents that are 33 that have been in this business 10 years. And they're operating like an older agent more than I am. And so I think it's not even just, well, they are so stuck in the ways that that I can't stand around being around people that say, we've never done it that way. Or they say, this has always worked for me. And so I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing. You have to understand everything, change is inevitable. And also, I had somebody tell me this last week, and I thought it was so true. We have a lot of people that have been in the business for a while. And look, that could be people that are 20-year veterans that are 45 years old. Or it could be somebody that's been in the business and they're in their 60s and they're just set in their ways. And what this person told me last week is, you have to understand, when you stop moving forward and you begin to say, my business is good, I'm just going to coast, I guess you could say. You can only coast one way, and that is down. And so what you have to understand is that if you're not applying the new marketing techniques, if you're not testing and trying and utilizing AI, what you're doing is you're actually moving backwards, and that will reveal itself. I've said this about AI. I have no doubt in my mind that AI is not going to replace professional real estate agents. But I do believe with all my heart that over the next 3 to 5 years, the agents that will lean in, understand AI, utilize it in a way that they can serve their clients at a higher level, they will absolutely outperform those agents that do not utilize it. So from that perspective, when I'm talking about, when I say an older agent in the business, that's someone that just doesn't adapt to what's changed. Obviously, a younger generation grew up with cell phones in their hands. And even the generation that didn't grow up with that now, it's embarrassing to see how many, when it tells me at the end of the week, how many hours on average I've been on social media or on my phone every day. It's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing.
So it's one of those where you just have to adapt and understand. And so what I try to do is just try to be around agents that are doing things new, fresh, different. Doesn't mean, look, at a core fundamental way, this business is still about relationships and bringing value to the marketplace. Now, the delivery on that has changed. The delivery of, instead of somebody being in my CRM, which it still works, but of them being in my CRM versus me being a friend of theirs on social media that I'm commenting and having conversation with through direct messages, it's a different way of building that relationship instead of me sending out an email campaign to tell them what's going on in the market every week. So there's different ways of delivery, but at our core fundamentals, it's still about relationships and bringing value to the marketplace. The delivery is just a little different.
I totally agree. In fact, when you mentioned that, it's like how many things I get in the mailbox from agents and things like that. And I go, and this is me giving it away. When everybody else is zigging, I'm going to zag. When they start to zag, I'm going to zig. If you're sending out the emails, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go see you. If they're all going to see you, then but I never do the emails because they get lost in email purgatory. It's like, delete.
Yeah, I will tell you some of the stuff that I've really looked at, and what I've tried to do is like, look, everything still works. There are seasons where things come and go out of what works best. My buddy Jimmy Mackin, co-founder of Listing Leads, he does a great job of writing copy. We did an interview this last week where we talked about 5 direct mail pieces. Look, those 5 direct mail pieces were different than any direct mail pieces I'd sent in my 30-year career in a lot of cases.
Can you give a real
other than
on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the biggest thing is like, it's just understanding and getting very targeted, and a couple of, we did 5 different ones, and it was really, a lot of them are just, a little bit of a shift on what we've done in the past. So I'll just give you one, for example. We call it the magic buyer letter, or Jimmy calls it that. And what he does is he basically takes the buyer, I've called it the buyer's bait kind of program, where basically we're taking a buyer that we haven't been able to find the right home for. They have a specific type of home or a neighborhood they want to be in. Mm-hmm. So we're getting very focused in on a specific group of homes that might fit for this. And then on the letter, we're basically saying, and the copy's written, and you can see all this in Listing Leads where he does this, but basically, or you can see it on that video. And it'll be an Inman article, actually, depending on when you're listening to this, it will be going live this next week. But it will actually goes in and gives a specific, like, I know you're probably not thinking about selling. But if you were wondering if there are people that would love to live in your neighborhood, I'd love to share with you a client I'm working with, and I'm doing everything in my power to help them find the ideal home. They are looking for, and it's bullet points, a 4-bedroom home in this specific neighborhood that you live in. They have been pre-approved for this amount. They are looking to be close to these things, or what's important to them, just a few bullet points. And then it just goes into that, whether you're considering selling or not, I promised my buyer that I would do everything in my power to help them find the ideal home. And that's why I'm sending this letter. If you or someone in the neighborhood is considering selling, please let me know, because we may have a situation where it would be a win-win. And the buyer has said for the right place, they will be willing to pay a premium. Now, this is different copy. And then it's just simply, if you're curious about your value, or you're curious and would like to know more details about this and you're considering selling, reach out. So it's a little bit of a different piece. And that direct mail piece, where it's not just a shotgun piece that goes out to all over the place, that is working really well right now. Also, telling the story, and this could be emails, this could be direct mail, but telling the story of a success story. In other words, making the process the hero. In some markets, we had an example of one of the postcards that was sent out, and it was like, not all homes are selling right now, but this one did. Here's the story. And it breaks down what they did in the process to be able to get that home sold during that time. It's a great example of this. So there are so many different ways to do the same things we've been doing in the past and do them differently. And that's why, like with Jimmy, I had him on the mastermind you referenced, and he did do a discount if there's any agents that wanted it. It was the quick win, and it was like 50% off the first month or whatever, and it's a month-to-month deal. But those are what I like to do is find the people that are doing things differently. This is what I've tried to do over the years, is I try to find the best ideas, bring them back, and kind of just share those ideas out with everybody else, because I just think it helps make everybody better. So just a little twist on some of the things that we've done in the past, and doing them a little bit differently has increased the effectiveness of those dramatically.
When are you going to write the book?
Yeah. Well, here's the problem. Listen, initially, yeah, listen, this is the problem. Is like, I had planned to write the book, and a lot of, when I'm writing a weekly article for Inman, it gives me a great understanding of what agents are interested in. The problem right now is that in order to write a book, sure, you can write the book relatively quickly, but by the time it goes through production, it gets delivered out, things have changed. And so in reality now, the book that quote unquote I'm trying to write is now, between 1,200 and 1,700 words a week for Inman in those Sunday articles that I do, because it's timely and it gives me the ability to bring that information that way. So it's just so hard, especially if you do what you and I do, which is real estate strategy for agents to serve their clients at the highest level. By the time we get 6 months from now, the stuff that I'm talking about today, if I'm still talking about that, I have been passed by. And so it is just continuously adapting and finding those opportunities to what's working this week. So that's an example, like that interview that I did with Jimmy Mackin that is live now on my YouTube channel, and that will be the article this week. We did that last week because we wanted the freshest ideas that we'd gotten feedback that was working for agents literally right now. Because if we wait 6 weeks to put that out, some of the stuff may be stale, or maybe there's even something that's more effective then.
So true. I was asked to give a speech come up in February on AI, and I was asked probably 3-4 months ago, and I said, sure. And since then, of course, so many things have developed. So I put in a folder for that speech all these new ideas, because it's evolving all the time. And then I ran into the woman who hired me to come and speak to this group next year. And she said, I've been thinking, so much has changed in AI since we first spoke. And I just sort of laughed, and I said, tell me about it. I said, I got you covered. It's like, I've got your folder, and everything is evolving. So yeah, it's like there's new tools, there's new technology. I remember when ChatGPT first came out, because I was at a real estate conference and this woman was talking about ChatGPT, and I had heard of it before, but I wasn't really sure. But boy, I went home and had so much fun with it. And I've taught so many people how to use it, and how you can use it, not just to write silly little things, but to use it for strategy. It's like,
absolutely.
It's like use it for strategy, not just for silly little things. But
yeah.
So
I think that is the biggest shift that I've seen in my entire 31-year career. I think it will change everything as far as our ability. It already has for me. I mean, it gives me such an opportunity, like you say, to discuss strategy, to take, that was something that literally Jimmy and I were talking about, is literally going in. One of the other things that we focused in on that is that understanding that over 50% of the sellers next year are anticipated to be what he calls the silver tsunami, the 60-year-olds that have lived in their house for an extended period of time. And so one of the things that he talked about is well, how do you identify this? Well, there's you can buy these services out there, but you could literally take the MLS data, download it for the last couple of years, and find the hot spots in the neighborhoods where the owners have been there for over 10 years and do some things, and it will give you a very targeted list. So I just think, utilizing it on so many different levels, and it just continues to get, listen, this is the thing, is as we're talking now, artificial intelligence, whether using ChatGPT or any of the other models, it's the worst it's ever going to be. It gets better every single day. And so literally it's something that just continues to get better and better. And if you can harness that, it is so powerful in the way that you can serve your clients.
It's great. I don't know how I existed without it at this point. It's like, are there other tools besides AI that realtors can use for technology and such to give them the edge in the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think any technology right now is AI driven, if it's as effective as it can be. So, I mean, look, there's some things old school that I still use day to day. BombBomb, which is a video recording app that embeds in there. I mean, I've been using that for 10 years, but it continues to give the open rates better. It gives us more personalized on the communication. That's one that I've always used. We're seeing, obviously, I don't want to go too deep into the technology stuff that we're seeing out there, but when you're looking at some of the things that are coming, you've got everything from, 11 Labs and HeyGen, which basically are two that can clone your voice, that can give an avatar where you can record videos without ever being in front of a camera, and just utilizes the capabilities with AI there. I think those are exciting things. Also just some of the basic things for social media that we're seeing out there, whether that be some of the tools that are like captions that gives you the ability to just make sure that you're getting the captions on your videos. Also has a translator for multiple languages. It also has the ability to use, they call it AI contact, where if I'm looking off camera and I'm speaking, it will actually move my eyes into the camera where I'm looking into people's soul for the connection. I mean, there's so many tools out there right now that are just doing amazing things for agents. It's a great time to be in this business, and the efficiencies just keep getting better and better.
I don't know if you follow a fellow named Ford Sakes, branding expert. I'm going to highly recommend him. Talk about AI. Well, he gave us a list of different ones. He talked about how they can do your voice for you and so many things. It's like, I have a list. I haven't been able to get through the list yet to check them all out, but it's just fascinating how many are out there. So looking ahead, is there anything that you can give for advice to predict? Well, we don't have that crystal ball, although I did buy one on Amazon, but I bring it to speeches and say, okay, let me get my crystal ball out. But
exactly,
what should people look for in the future coming up in the housing market for a buyer, seller, realtor, whomever? Just what do you see happening? What kind of changes do you see? Last minute.
Yeah, what I would just say that, economically, we know that there are cycles, and understanding where you are in the cycle is critically important. So depending on where you are in the country, obviously, we're seeing transactions flat to up a little bit from where they were over the last couple of years. We anticipate, and all of the predictions are from all of the economists that, I utilize a lot of stuff that my friend David Childers does over at Keeping Current Matters. Everybody pretty much is anticipating that we will see measured growth as far as transactions going forward. Look, it would be naive to not understand that spring always comes after fall or after winter. And winters sometimes are long and they're cold, and sometimes they last longer than they do, but it always comes. And so if we are looking at the real estate market and the economic cycle, we have been, at least in our area, we're now 3 years into increasing numbers of inventory that's available, houses for sale. We're looking at prices that have been flat to even down in some places. And what we're seeing now is that, look, that doesn't, just like everything else, that doesn't last forever. And so from that standpoint, if you're going to be someone who is looking at what do I anticipate going forward, I anticipate we're going to have continuing prices to go up at a measured level, a more healthy level. I would anticipate going forward, we're going to have more transactions than we had this year in 2026. And I think that we're going to see more of a balancing of that. It will be an opportunistic market for buyers and sellers. In other words, there will be places where if you're patient as a buyer, you can find a seller that you can negotiate with. If you're a seller and you're looking, I think you're going to have increased demand. We're seeing that already this fall. And I think that's going to lead to the sellers that want to sell having opportunities more than they've even had in the past couple of years. So I'm very optimistic on where we are as far as going forward. And look, I don't know when we're at the bottom, but it sure feels like we've been there, or we're actually coming out of that now. And as we know, economically speaking, there are ebbs and flows in transaction numbers, there are ebbs and flows in pricing. And what we've seen over the last few years is we've seen an ebb, I guess you could say, where things were decreasing on transactions, even pricing in some places. And so it'd be naive not to realize that is always followed by increase in pricing and also an increase in number of transactions.
Totally agree. I know that for a lot of people, they said that this has been their best year ever. I will tell you, honestly, it has not been my best year. Last year, though, was 2024, when they all said it was horrible. It was one of my best years ever. It was like, oh my gosh, it was a great year. But I have noticed in the fall, it has picked up and it has gotten very busy, very active. And I'm like, this is good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. No, listen, I was with 30 agents. I had a mastermind with 30 agents here in my local office this morning, and literally every single one of them have seen increased activity levels over the last 3 to 4 weeks. And so I think that is an encouragement. And even I was talking to one agent who's a great top producing agent. And she was saying, oh, it was horrible first quarter last year. And she already has pending contracts that are going to account for almost a quarter of what her total sales volume is going to be in January. And so, that are on the books. And so I think we're trending obviously in the right direction as far as seeing the amount of activity we're seeing right now this fall.
I totally agree. So Jimmy, tell us, our audience, if they want to reach you, maybe they want you to come in and speak to their group, or they just want to know about your mastermind group or whatever it is. How do they reach you?
Yeah, I mean, the best way is YouTube. We've got over 600 training videos there, consistently having one a week there. We're doing live mastermind once a week there on Fridays, or on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram. And then, if you just punch my name in, it should pop up, and just reach out to me, DM me through Instagram is a great way to get in touch. And I appreciate this. I mean, this has been great. And I think, look, if you're out there and you're thinking about what it is that you can do, or what does the future look like, I can just say this. I've never been more excited about the business than I am today. And that comes from the technology that is driving the opportunity for us to serve at a higher level as agents, the professionalism I'm seeing from agents. Look, when you have a pullback like this, it is a little bit of a natural culling of the herd, I guess you could say, where the top agents do the majority of the business, and you see some that maybe shouldn't be in the business to find other things that they can do, other opportunities. And so I just would say, if you're out there, get excited about what the future holds. I truly do believe the best is yet to come.
Oh, that's beautiful. So I have one question left. It's my signature question I ask all my guests, because we are called Success Through Connections, because I believe that everything happens through the connections that we have. So can you share with us a story of how an opportunity presented itself to you, and it was because of a connection that you had?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this is something, to me, the best agents, if you can show me how many quality relationships an agent has, I can almost tell you exactly what their business is looking like right now and what it will look like going forward. So there's nothing better than the connections. I had been doing this for a while. We had sold this company to HomeServices of America. I had wanted to go back into sales a little bit, because I was watching and I was teaching so many things and people having so much success. So I did, and I did that for 6 months, stepped away from this position. One of my best friends in the business is Chris Kelly, who's CEO for HomeServices America. He had moved into our area. He and I had worked very closely, obviously, in the leadership team with HomeServices and with BHHS. But he and I were still, after I left, I made sure that I didn't burn any bridges. I was just trying to build them and just doing what I felt like was best for me and my family. Well, he and I would still walk, occasionally, every once a week or a couple times a week, and depending on the weather, because he lived here locally. And as he moved into the position as CEO of HomeServices of America, we were walking one day in June, and he said, hey, it was actually my birthday. And he said, hey, I got a little birthday present for you. I'd like to make an offer for you to become the chief coaching officer for HomeServices of America, which is basically my dream job. I just get to wake up every morning and figure out how I give value to agents. And look, that was because of the relationship. He was in a position, he was building out his team. And because of our relationship and his understanding of who I am, hopefully, and the value that I bring, he came to me and he created a position for me. There had never been I didn't know what that was. I was like, what is that exactly? And we had to figure it out, basically build the plane as we took off with it. But literally within 2 weeks from him bringing that up on our morning walk, we had worked everything out, and I was back home at HomeServices of America and with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, as being able to lead, now, roughly 65, 70,000 agents in all of the companies. And it was all because of the connection. It was all because of the relationship. And it was all because of that. When I did leave, I tried to do it in the right way that caused as little disruption as possible. And, he and I just remained friends, confidants through that time when we weren't even working together. And lo and behold, once he elevated, he brought me along with him. So I'm very thankful for that as well.
Isn't that a beautiful story? I love it. It's like, at the beginning of the show, I always tell people how I'm connected to the person who's my guest. And I failed to do that with you. But honestly, to our audience here, is how I met Jimmy was I followed him on this Inman news, and I would just always look forward to, that was practically the only thing I read there. Honestly, if I couldn't sit still for the whole thing, I read you and I watched your videos. And then I don't know, I must have signed up for something, because then I got an invitation to your mastermind group, and I went, holy cow, I don't work with Berkshire Hathaway, but I'm not going to miss this. And so
Yeah.
every chance I get, and you're just so genuine on the show. You were on the mastermind. You're just so genuine and authentic. I thought, so it's like I'm putting him on my bucket list for who I want to get on my podcast. So I thank you for that. And I want to thank my audience for joining us today. Hopefully this has been very helpful for you if you're a buyer or seller or a realtor. And I just want to remind you to subscribe to this podcast. We release a new episode every single Tuesday morning. And remember that success does not happen in isolation. It happens because of the connections that you have. And today, connections are currency. And connections are the real power move. So until next week, I'm Zelda Greenberg, your host of Success Through Connections. Keep connecting. I'll see you next week.